Alright, this is episode 14 involving the equation of a line. In particular, finding the equation of a line that is parallel or perpendicular to a given line. As with all of these episodes, be sure that you've actually practiced these questions first and actually tried the assignment first before you actually see the answers. So here we go. Pause the video at any time to read the questions. Look at the first one, pause it if you need to, but I will do it as of right now. So we're looking for a point, or we're looking for an equation that goes through this point and that is perpendicular to this equation right here. So they're starting us off with this question right here. This is the equation in the question, and we're trying to figure out which of these answers will actually work out. Now the most quickest way to work these questions out is graphically. So let me show you an example of that. So here's me graph. This is an example of my graph for question number 1. Let's start off with the one that was the question, and you can see that I graphed it by taking the y-intercept, which is 5, and then I went up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2 for my slope. So I do know that the slope in the question is up 1 over 2. So I know that my answer has to have a slope that is the negative reciprocal. So flip the fraction and change the sign, and I'm looking for the slope that is negative 2. From my picture, I go to the point that they have instructed me to go to, which is negative 2, positive 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is right there at that fingertip. And then I went down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. But the most important point to get to is the y-intercept. I already know the slope is negative 2, and by repeating that pattern for the slope, I find that the y-intercept has to be 1. So it must be choice 1 is the answer. Whoops. Well, yeah, watch those signs. It would be choice 2 is the correct answer. The only other one it could be, based on the slope, would be number 4, but that would be wrong because that would put the answer way down over here where the y-intercept is negative 5. Whoop. All right, let's go to the second picture. The second one looks like about the same type of question, but this is definitely a little bit of a level up, I would say, because the given equation is not in y equals mx plus b form. This is one way to work the question out, and I would say that this is maybe the best idea right off the bat, is to get y alone. So taking the equation that they're giving me, I want to get the y alone so I can read the slope and the y-intercept, so I can graph it, or most importantly, just to get the slope. So I'll start by trying to get y alone, so I'm going to move the 4x to the other side by subtracting it away. If I combine like terms, that gives me negative 6y equals negative 4x plus 15. Notice that I tucked the x in front. I wasn't able to combine these because they are not like terms, so they stay as two separate terms. The last step to get the y alone is to divide everything by negative 6. And you can see on this question, we end up getting a slope of 2/3. And a y-intercept that's not that easy to, makes you feel a little uncomfortable, I guess. So I'm saying 15 divided by negative 6 would be negative 2.5. When looking at a graph of this equation, you can realize that it's a little bit more complicated to work out in this way, this technique that I'm using, because the y-intercept's negative 2.5, so down 2.5 spaces, and then up 2 spaces over 3, up 2 spaces over 3 gives me the picture of the line. Well, at least that gives me a start, and the most important information I'm getting off of this is that the slope is 2/3. So in my answer, I need a slope that is the negative reciprocal, that would be negative 3 over 2, the same fraction flipped, but with a different sign. So as I'm looking at these choices here to the left, and knowing what I know about equations, I know I'm looking for negative 3 halves in the equation. So it narrows down my choices to perhaps choice 1 or 3. Now graphing the point that they're giving me, 6 comma 9, so finding that on the graph, 6 spaces and 9 up, places me way over here. I know the slope of the answer's got to be down 3 over 2, so I know that the line will follow this pattern here for its slope. What I do want to know is the y-intercept, which will be off my graph, will be quite high over here someplace. So I'm looking for one of these choices to come up with a y-intercept that is, in the teens or maybe in the 20s. And that's what I will have to do to make the decision whether or not it's choice 1 or choice 3. So I believe it is choice 1, and there's a reason for me to believe that, which maybe I'll share with you. It's involving something called the point slope formula, but let me just get right to why it's choice 1. Would be to solve this equation to find out what the y-intercept is. So get this equation solved for y. So it started off being y minus 9 equals negative 3 halves x minus 6. If I want to get this equation in slope y-intercept form, I can distribute the negative 3 halves into the parentheses and add the 9 over. Well, I'll do it one step at a time, so I'll distribute the negative 3 halves through. Negative 3 halves times 6 would be negative 18, well, positive 18 over 2, so it would be positive 9. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have to add 9 to both sides to get the y by itself, and that's giving me some confidence that the answer is right, because I've got the y-intercept at positive 18, which would match my graph, that the y-intercept, if the sheet of graphing paper was large enough, the y-intercept would be up here at 18. And I could take a look at choice 4 to show you that that would not work out, but we want to try to save some time on the video. A quicker way to actually get to the answer would be to use something called the point slope formula, which is not something that a lot of teachers spend time with their students. And the point slope formula does look like this, and basically says that if we know the slope and we know the x coordinate and a y coordinate of a point, we can just plug that information right into the formula. So we know that the y coordinate of our point is 9. We know that the slope we're looking for is negative 3 halves. And we know that the x coordinate of the point they gave us was 6. And that would be a very quick way to determine the final answer. So I've got a few more questions here. I think a total of 4 more for some good practice for you to follow along with me. As always, pause the video if you want to get the most out of this and try the questions yourself. So pausing the video and unpause when you're ready. We're going to do another one, but this time we're looking for something that's parallel to the equation that's given to us here. Underline it in blue. So in the question, we're given the equation here that I underlined. It's not in it's not in slope y-intercept formula, so I will try to get that into shape by getting y alone as a way to begin. So maybe you're one step ahead of me, so you want to subtract 8x from both sides. So that the y can start to be by itself. So we'll end up getting negative 8x minus 4. We can't combine those because they're not like terms. And then dividing by negative 4, we'll get the y finally by itself. And that gives me y equals 2x plus 1. So that's the equation in my question that I've just rearranged the pieces for. Now we could solve this question by graphing it, just as we did the other ones, but for this one here I want to try something different with you. Let's solve this question algebraically. So let me give myself a little more space here to work with. And well, let's figure out what we've got going on here. So the slope that we have is 2, or 2 over 1. The slope that we need would be parallel to this one. So we also need the slope to be 2, or 2 over 1. So thinking about the ingredients that I need to make an equation of a line, there's two pieces that we need. The slope, and we need the y-intercepts. Well, the slope here is easy to know. We need something parallel, so we need it to have exactly the same slope. But what I don't know is my y-intercept. So I can use y equals mx plus b and plug in all the ingredients that I have already. I do know that the slope is 2, and from the given information I know that the x is 1, so I can replace x with 1. I don't know the b, but I do know that the y is -3. So -3 equals 2 times 1, which is 2. Subtracting 2 from both sides can reveal to me that b must be -5. So my answer will be the equation y equals 2x minus 5. So which of the ones above have a slope that's 2 and a y-intercept that's -5? I'm going to finish this kind of quickly by just telling you it is choice A. And you can either think it through with just doing the math in your head or write it out, that when you solve this equation for y, when you get y alone, it'll reveal exactly what we wanted to see, that the slope comes out to be 2 and the y-intercept comes out to be -5. Looking for an equation that's perpendicular to this one, well, right away I know that the slope that we have is -3, or -3 over 1 if you'd make a fraction out of it. And I know that the slope that we need has got to be positive 1/3, so that I end up getting a perpendicular line. So it's down to choice 3 or choice 4. And we could do this graphically, or we could use the algebraic move that I did in the last one. So on this one I'm going to actually solve it algebraically. So I know that the slope that we need in the answer is going to be 1/3. What I don't know is what the y-intercept is. So I'm going to use y equals mx plus b, plug in the slope that I have for the answer, plug in the 3 for the x, plug in the -1 for the y, and use that to solve b. For b, I get -1 equals 1/3 of 3 is 1. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides and find out that b equals -2. So it would have to be choice number 4. You can, as I mentioned before, you can actually graph these as well. This would be the graph of the question and also the answer as well, and you can see how that does agree with the work that we're doing algebraically. For the next question, let's see how fast we can do it without making any mistakes. So we want to get y by itself to actually reveal what the slope and y-intercept of the given equation is. So subtracting 6x from both sides, dividing by 2 will quickly get me the slope has got to be -3 and the y-intercept has to be 1. But making sure that I'm slowing down and not going too fast is important. So the slope that we have is -3. The slope that we need, if we need something that's parallel, we're looking for exactly the same slope. So when you're dealing with parallels and perpendiculars and a whole bunch of questions one after the other, it's important to make sure that you are paying attention to which one you're looking for. We're looking for the one that has the same slope. So if I use my little boxes like I did in the last one, the slope that we need is -3. The next ingredient I need to know is what the b is. So I can use y equals mx plus b. Plug in the y. Plug in the slope. Place the x. And then just solve for b. So we'll end up getting -6 equals -3 plus b. Adding 3 to both sides gives me b is equal to -3. So I'm looking for the equation above that has a slope of -3 and a y-intercept of -3. Let's see if we can finish this question without writing anything else down except for circling the right answer. So using a little mental math, if I was trying to figure out the slope of this equation, I would have to subtract x from both sides, putting -1x over here, dividing by -6 would change that -1x into -1x over -6, which would be positive 1/6. So this would not be the correct equation. Let's take a look at choice C and see if that is the right one. If I subtract 6 from both sides, I'd get -6x here, and then divide -6x by -2, and that gives me +3 for a slope. It's not the slope that I'm looking for, so it wouldn't be that one. So it must be down to choice B or choice D. Both of them should give me a slope that's -3, and I can check that out mentally. Subtracting 6 from both sides gives me a -6x from both sides gives me -6 over here. -6 divided by 2 gives me a -3. So it would be the same for choice D. The slope would come out to be -3. Now which one would actually give me a slope of or y-intercept of -3? Looks like this is the right choice right here, choice D, because subtracting 6 from both sides, 6x from both sides, well, it doesn't hurt to write down a little bit to make sure that we're right. Subtracting 6x from both sides would give me that, and dividing everything by 2 would give me the y-intercept that I need and give me the slope that I need. And we got one more left. Don't know. And I already peeked ahead at this one. This is a nice, easy one to finish up with for today. So very good for you to stick with this. I'm hoping that all the work that we've done today, you can see that there's two different techniques. You could use the graph paper to figure this out. You could also work them out by hand. But you have to go with what you feel most comfortable with. And of course, on a long exam, like a state exam where you have many hours to work these questions out, you should take the time to graph them and work them out by hand if you can. But if you can only do it one of the two ways, that works too. And any time you can check your work is, of course, always a very good thing. And that's why graphing it is such a great idea. So this last one, we're looking for something that's perpendicular. And I can see that the equation is not in y equals mx plus b form. So let's start by subtracting 6 from both sides to get the y alone, and dividing both sides by 5. And you might think right off the bat, by that, looking at that y-intercept, negative 6/5, that might make you a little bit concerned. However, it is correct. But the most important information we're getting out of this is the slope. So the slope that we have is negative 3/5. If I was looking for something parallel, it would have exactly the same slope. But I'm looking for something that's perpendicular, so the slope that I need has got to be the same numbers flipped, but with a different sign. So negative reciprocals, 5/3. And this is the answer. There's only one of them that has 5/3 as the slope. And that is it for today. Have a fantastic day.